Greetings to all gamers. I won't say that I once played the first games of the Silent Hill series as a child. All I know about the old games is that there is Silent Hill 2 and there's a composer Akira Yamaoka and a good plot. After the second part, all the games in the series turned out to be worse and worse, and in the 2014 year, Konami showed PT, such a small teaser of the upcoming new Silent Hill developed by Kojima and his team. But as everyone knows, then he had a fight with Konami and left there, and that game never saw the light of day. After many years of waiting, a remake of the second Silent Hill was released, which gave the series a second wind. So, the first game in the series for me was a remake of this game. The game left positive impressions with its plot and combat system. After this game, a short time later, a new Silent Hill was announced with the postscript F. They showed the trailer. They said the game would be full of blood, the horror of which no one had seen, that the game wouldn't be able to pass in one breath, and every scene would make you vomit. Well, or there was something similar. In any case, they promised something interesting. It was also noted that the game will move more towards action. This interested me because after the remake of the second Silent Hill, expectations were high. I'll try to reveal what happened in the end in today's video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Let's not delay the introduction and get started. I will not immediately throw mud at the game and start with the atmosphere. Well, in the game in this regard, everything is fine. There is some kind of force that puts pressure on you and you constantly feel uncomfortable. At the time when most horror games are used to show your screamers, this game doesn't do that. But instead, we don't get the constant fear that someone will be standing around the corner. There are such moments too, but they are so rare and not unexpected that they don't scare. But we get a depressing atmosphere that is expressed in the design of the city and monsters. According to the traditions of the series, the city or town is shrouded in fog. It's no longer the city of Silent Hill. And why is the game called Silent Hill? We'll talk about this a little later. The city gets bloodier and nastier as the game progresses. Blood red flowers begin to fill all the areas like an infection. You'll mostly walk around the city alone and have no one to rely on. And as soon as it's time to move on, your friends just disappear, even though they were standing next to you a second ago. Because of this, it's unclear whether everything that is happening is real or not. New monsters will appear which reek of uncleanness and disgust. As in Silent Hill 2, the design of the monsters carries some meaning. But to be honest, I didn't understand any of this because I didn't have the ability to think philosophically. This monster may remind you of the main character's father, because he was drunk and did bad things in his house. As we know, Silent Hill shows the nightmares of the person who got there. Since we're already talking about the father of the main character, then let's smoothly move on to the plot of the game. If you're afraid of spoilers, then go to the next timecode. Well, to talk about the plot, I need to give you a bit of a base. The game takes place in a town whose name I can't pronounce. The main character is a student named Hinako Shimizu, who leaves her house after a quarrel with her parents to meet with her friends. Friends gather together, and then one of her friends is killed by a monster that appeared out of the fog. Everyone starts running everywhere, which is why they are cut off from each other. After the monster got behind Hinako, we see that the town slowly began to fill with monsters. That's how the student's fun adventure begins. I don't even know where to start. The plot of the game contains the idea of domestic violence and that the opinion of women was not taken seriously, of course in the 60s. Hinako grew up in a poor family, and when she grew up they wanted to give her to a rich family, but she didn't want this and wanted to be with a really loved one. The situation was further aggravated by the fact that Hinako's father had huge debts, and he wanted to close them using the wealth of Groom's family. It's not the plot itself that's more interesting here, but its presentation. There are no direct answers, everything is presented in images or metaphors, as it may seem at first glance. But in fact, the story of the game is revealed gradually, and in order to understand the game, close all questions, and see the true ending, you need to beat the game 3 times. I understand that games are created to make money from them, and if you tell players that the game is replayable and there are many endings in the game, then this will attract a lot of players. Of course, the main message of the game can be understood from the first playthrough. Everything that I briefly said above about the plot is very superficial, and this is not even a small part of the whole intrigue taking place in the game. And to understand everything the developers wanted to tell you, that is to reveal the layers of the plot, you need to go through the game several times. To be honest, I don't disapprove of this approach, I hate it, but this is my taste. Maybe someone likes to go through the game several times. Now in order to understand the details that were missed during the first playthrough, while already understanding the essence of the game, but in order to go through the tedious gameplay over and over again, so that you can be shown everything they wanted. It seems the developers realized that players wouldn't be able to handle it, revealing the entire story at that pace would simply burn players out. The developers solved the problem by gracefully adding multiple endings and spreading these endings across different playthroughs. Note that on the first playthrough you will not get another ending, you will get exactly the ending that the game's authors intended. I'll honestly say that I personally went through the game only once and had no desire to go through it several times, so I decided to take a look what's really going on in the game and what endings the game has. I was aghast at what I saw, because initially it seemed that the story only concerns the main character and her problem of choice, or rather its absence. At the end they showed a scene where it was obvious that the girl had taken pills and everything that happened in the game was happening in her head. As a result, she staged escape at her wedding and ran away. I thought, okay, that's fine, now there are a lot of plots where everything that happens is not real. But in fact there are players above who uses the characters in the game as their pawns in order to achieve their benefits, and the player decides which side to choose and against whom to fight. And anyway, if it was all a fever dream and the first ending, then what's the point of introducing the players above to the plot? Well, I'll leave further thoughts to the fans, since there is no specific answer here. Summarizing the above, I want to say that adding multiple endings is great, but when you just can't get any ending due to your care, if certain conditions are met in the first playthrough and you can get the whole story until you complete the game at least 3 times, it's kind of fluid and looks like the developers didn't know how to pull all these layers of story in one playthrough. Since I mentioned boring gameplay above, let's talk about it in more detail. Let's remember that the game belongs to the genre of survival horror. That is, in addition to scaring us, the game should set us such tasks so that we manage inventory and find the right use of resources. For example, you find a resource but the inventory is full, and then you need to decide what to remove from the inventory in order to select a resource. Also, with the use of consumables, is it worth going to the front line, thus spending more resources and then suffering in the boss fight due to the lack of consumables, or is it still worth bypassing an enemy, thus saving consumables? The elements of survival, as far as I'm concerned, are implemented well. There is a constant shortage of consumables. There are enough consumables scattered across levels, but it's not enough that you always run out of resources. Due to this, the game is not perceived as easy and offers the player a challenge. Well, in order for a player to use consumables and feel the very elements of survival, you need to force a player to spend them, and then enemies and the combat system come into play. In the game, the combat system is very similar to the combat system from the remake of Silent Hill 2. But in Silent Hill F, there is a full focus on close combat, as there are no firearms in the game. There are also turns left to dodge attacks and to perform a follow-up attack. Due to the lack of firearms, it was necessary to add at least something for a change. Durability has been added to all weapons with some exceptions. Well, if a weapon breaks completely, then it will not be possible to restore it. This in turn leads us to inventory management, where, as I said earlier, a player needs to decide what's the priority, take a repair kit or give priority to other types of consumables. The addition of different weapons has also introduced new gameplay features. For example, when you encounter a large number of opponents, it's advisable to use fast weapons, and for boss fights, slow weapons with high damage. In fact, it doesn't matter at all, and you can play the game with any weapon. A variety of weapons is good, but let's be honest, if the process of using weapons is not interesting, then what's the point of this combat system? And the combat system sucks here. Don't get me wrong, it's not bad for the game, and it's even a little more dynamic. But the problem is that this system doesn't develop in any way during the game, and no new tasks or conditions appear before a player. Just as you were waiting for a window to deal damage at the beginning of the game, you will continue to do so as the game progresses. Although more and more new opponents will appear, but the tactics of fighting them don't change. Only different opponents obviously have different movesets. You might say, well, that's why there is a deep and thoughtful combat system for such a game. Well, it really doesn't need to be here if the balance between the battles and the plot is maintained. But here you're fighting with someone almost all the time, and there is no reward for killing an opponent, so there is no point in killing them. Fortunately, in most cases it's possible to run through enemies completely ignoring them, but then there are chances to miss precious consumables, although even in this case it's possible to collect them. But the stiffiest part begins when one specific opponent appears, who blocks your path and prevents you from running across, which makes killing him mandatory. I would show this opponent, but I think YouTube won't like it. Whoever played it will understand. At the end of the game, such an infernal hell begins that so many enemies pile on top of you and you just don't have enough heals. The most fucked up thing starts when you have so many opponents in a row and you don't have enough weapon durability to deal with them all, even though you have 3 of them. The situation gets to a point where in places you can run through and that are filled with enemies, a weapon will spawn at a specific point an unlimited number of times. That is, if your weapon breaks during a fight, you can go to a weapon spawn point, and if enough time has passed, a weapon will be there. Of course, this is the peak of game design and how to implement battles with enemies. The final race with small arenas of enemies is such shit. You are put up against such disgusting enemies and in large numbers that you want to open a window and get some fresh air. Now briefly about the puzzles and the bosses of this game. There are puzzles in the game, there are a lot of them. In principle, it's to solve these puzzles you need to explore a location, which in turn leads to a clash with enemies. Basically, you are given a task, to solve which you need to collect some items by a location and use them to solve the task. They are simple and not suffocating, and some are even interesting. There is nothing to say about the bosses in the game. They are simple and can be defeated on the first attempt. They differ from ordinary enemies in that they have some significance for the plot. Rather, the usual accumulation of opponents will be stronger than the bosses of the game. To summarize all of the above, I want to say that the game is not bad. As a first game reboot, it's not a bad way to test the ground for further games, if this is considered a reboot at all. The game, as promised, is quite violent in terms of the events taking place in the plot. But the main question I have is what Silent Hill has to do with it. The events of the game don't take place in a well-known city, but in a small town in Japan. But the game also has, so to speak, the real world and the other world, where the characters' nightmares are shown. Personally, I have only one answer to this question, and that is that Silent Hill is no longer a feature of one city, but a phenomenon in general. In this case, the events of future games in the series can unfold in any country and in any place. This gives developers more creative freedom and allows them to tell stories through the cultural lens of the places where future games in the series may take place. Or as always, you can say that this is a multiverse and so on. We'll wait and see. Well, that's it for now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. I hope to see you soon.